Okay, it's another video for anybody who hasn't been able to get into Zooms. Leslie, you need to be watching this video. Kamani, you should probably watch it. Donald, I know you've had some trouble getting in the Zoom meetings and everything, so maybe you ought to take a look at this video. But this is just for anybody who's had trouble with the Zoom meetings. This is just to catch up on some of the stuff we've been doing and reading. Um, the next writing, we for our writing we've done nonfiction so far, right? We did a personal narrative, and then we did a persuasive. We're writing a story, fiction, and we're doing a specific type of story. We're doing historical fiction, and historical fiction is a great way to write a story. It takes like a real point in history and puts a make believe story into it. For example, when we read that story, Baseball Saved Us, it was a real point in history when during World War II that Japanese American citizens were rounded up and put into concentration camps. That's something that really happened. And then, the fact that they played baseball to help themselves, feel better, that also happened too, I believe. But the story of Shorty, the little kid who got picked on for being Japanese, and also for being small, who ended up getting the game-winning hit and all that. That's a make-believe story. That didn't actually happen, but they put it in a historic event that actually did happen. So we're working on writing that type of story. And when we're placing our story, the setting is the Arabian Desert in the year 560. So it's just like 10 years before Muhammad was born. And so we're taking that point in history and making a story from it. And what we were doing is our research. If you're going to do historic fiction, you have to be an expert on the point in history where your story is going to take place. And since ours is taking place at the time of just before Muhammad and in the desert, we need to be familiar with that. So what we did is we went into the book, and I don't, Kamani and Leslie, I don't know if you've had a chance to, I can't remember how long it's been since you were able to be in a Zoom meeting with us, but we've been reading about the life of Muhammad, and I think it starts in chapter 10 here. Oh, nope, it's a little bit after that. Might be chapter 11. Nope, chapter 11. So we're writing a story about a character who's out in the desert in Arabia in the time of Muhammad. So what we did here is we read about what life was like out there at that time with this group of people called the Bedouins. They were these tough people who lived out in the desert and survived. And we talked about how, well, let's just reread this here. Life for the Bedouins was difficult and dangerous. Finding enough water in the desert to survive was a constant struggle, and there were barely enough crops and cattle to feed everyone. From a very young age, Muhammad would work for his foster family. As a boy, he would have tended the camels, taking them to the well to drink, and watching out for hyenas and other predators. At night in the desert, the sky was very clear and the temperature plummets. In the freezing air, under the stars, the men of the tribe would recite long oral poems. So we get that information and we used it here. Details for the story. Well, it did some of us for us. It's like for the subject of water. Well, finding enough water in the desert was always difficult. Food. We always found there was barely enough food to feed everyone. Crops were always just barely enough for everybody. Work, well, children tended to camels. Dangers, there's predators like hyenas. You could get lost in the desert, or raiders. Those are like thieves, well, not thieves, but robbers who would come and forcefully rob you, like beat you up and take what you have. So that was always a danger. And then the temperature, the climate there is very hot in the day and very cold at night. And then at the nighttime, men recited long poems about battles and adventures. So that all gives us an idea about this point in history where our story is going to take place. So we filled that out. And then what your job is going to be to do is to think of your setting, your protagonist, The protagonists want, the obstacle, and the resolution. Now, let's just go over these. Setting, of course, is where and when, right? And we're saying the Arabian Desert in the year 560. That's our setting. We're all writing in that setting, okay? And then a protagonist, that's the main character in the story. That's the main character. And for mine, I said my main character is a boy named Hakim. And his physical traits, he's a 10-year-old Bedouin boy, and he's small for his age. Those are his physical traits. And then his character traits, I said he is brave, and he wants to be treated like the other boys, right? That's his character traits, his personality. So that's our protagonist. When you come up with a protagonist, we want to think of their physical traits, how you describe them that way, and then their character traits, their personality, right? And then we come to this, the protagonist's want. The want is, something the protagonist wants, or a problem he is trying to solve. So it's something that in every good story, your protagonist has something that they're trying to do, some sort of problem they're trying to solve. And in my story, my idea, I chose my protagonist Hakim. He wants to prove he can guard the camels at night by himself. Remember, we said that in his history at this time, that was a child's work out in the desert to tend to the camels. So I put that in my story. He wants to prove he can guard the camels at night by himself. And then the obstacle, what's getting in the way of him achieving this? There's always got to be, in every good story, there's something, working against that character that he's got to get through to solve his problem. And that's the obstacle. I'm going to say the obstacle is the family thinks he's too small. They worry he or the camels could get hurt. So that's the obstacle. He has to get through that to solve his problem, right? And then a resolution, well, that's just how the problem is solved. In your story, how is the problem solved? So I'm going to say during a hyena attack, and I use that, like what we say, what were the dangers? There could be predators like hyenas. A hyena is a predator in the desert. So I said during a hyena attack, he grabs a stick and rocks and keeps them away until help arrives. And he proves he can do it. He proves he can guard the camels, even though he's just a small kid. All right. So that's what you're doing today. I want you to work on getting this filled out, 20.5. If you have not done it yet, Kamani and Leslie, I'm pretty sure you haven't done this because you haven't had the chance to. Leslie, I know you haven't done it yet. So this is definitely something for you to work on. Again, watch this video again. If you've missed this part, you can come back and look at this again. This is for like the historical part, what this was like, this point in history, what this place was like. And then you use that to help you come up with your story ideas. And think what are some other problems that a child, in this situation could face? There's all kinds. Okay? So just be thinking about that. All right? And how are you going to set up your stories? And you'll work on this 20.5 in your activity book. All right? I'll be back with other videos with other assignments for you to do. Okay? So go ahead and work on this for reading time today.